Previously on Real Men, Real Talk Live.
I was not aware of how I was behaving. Regardless of how it's affecting my relationships, I really didn't care. It wasn't until I got a little older that I started to care about what was the consequences for having these types of behaviors, have these types of feelings and emotions. And part of it was that I was unconscious. I was unconscious of what was actually happening to me personally. And so the first thing that had to happen was I had to recognize that there was a problem. I had a lot of emotional woundedness as a child. First reaction was to blame everybody else. I started to blame my parents, my upbringing, my aunts, teachers that did not do their job teaching properly and that kind of stuff. That was the beginning of my own personal journey in a very healthy manner. Prior to that, I go into the church, alcohol, drugs, anything to try to quell and push down the emotional wounds that I was having, not really being aware of the cause, and becoming aware and conscious of what was actually happening helped me on my journey to healing.
If you go into these particular ceremonies, you haven't been doing the work, looking to do the work through this, opening a gateway for other energies, entities, and beings to jump you. So you have to be aware that you know what you're signing up for. You have to be aware what we're currently living in. You know, your unconscious mind takes care of so much for you. It takes care of your immune system, automatic functions within your body. You don't have to do a thing. If you want to keep looking on the external world for your answers, like one of the greats in the field of the subconscious mind said, Carl Jung, he who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens.
Welcome back to Real Men, Real Talk Live. Welcome back, viewers, to episode 170. 170. We just hit another threshold on Real Men, Real Talk Live. My name is Jay. I'm the host of the show. I'm excited to introduce my co-host, Evis Love, coming in from Australia, the man of the land from down under. Welcome back, Ev. We have Daz coming in from somewhere in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. He calls Mesa, Arizona home tonight. Welcome back, Daz. And, of course, we have Jeff joining us from Nashville, Tennessee. He was off for a couple of weeks, but, you know, we all seem to find our way back home on Real Men, Real Talk Live this evening. We're hoping that this is the last week that Josh will be off. He's wrapping up a 15th season of Shark Tank. This is his last week. He may take a week off or so to recoup and renew. But in the meantime, we have a show. We have a new show tonight. I want to invite, as our viewers get ready to settle in and listen in tonight, welcome back, viewers. If you feel inspired to share our show out, drop it into your feed so your family and friends can pick up the replay on Real Men, Real Talk. Tonight's episode is all about loneliness or all alone or all one. Ev, since you're in the top shelf, I'm going to invite you to kick us off, get us hot, light us up, and get the show going tonight on this topic of loneliness or all one. We're going to break it down tonight.
All right, let's break it down, my brothers, sisters on the other side of the pond. Thank you, as always, for support. Share it out in the collective if you can. And whenever you're seeing this particular broadcast, you're always on divine time. But we're diving in again about this loneliness and alone. What are the key differences between that? Really understanding, and overstanding why many of us, particularly in this time of the ascension, are getting time to be alone. I'm maybe someone from experience that you could use as an example that loves his alone time. I love to have my alone space. I never did. I'm going to be straight up from the get go. It was something that was ingrained into me from the early days that I had to have people around me to fulfill certain emotions that I wanted to feel. I think to myself, when I was able to go back to that time and space to spend alone, some of the most and the biggest come throughs, some of the biggest awakenings really happened within my life. Some of those things that weren't allowed when I was in particular relationships, when I was having certain people, friends, even certain members, family members around me that really made me feel a particular way that I wasn't really comfortable in being alone. Loneliness, on the other hand, I could never say that I felt lonely. Why is that? Well, what I really started to see, my brothers and sisters, is that when we actually stem the word loneliness, it sinks straight away to emotions, to feelings, where we can be alone, but we not necessarily are lonely. Man, we could be in the company of many people and we could feel lonely. So we're going to be diving in deep. What are these key differences, which I've just outlined there, and how we can learn through some of our personal experiences, because there are a heap of us in the collective that are getting this opportunity to spend time alone. So I'm looking forward to breaking it down with my brothers tonight.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, I
Jeff,
want
it's
to go
been a
ahead.
while,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
It's
Go
been a
ahead.
while, brother. How have
Mm.
you been in this space, man, being all alone?
Man, I've been alone a long time, and I'm jonesing for a wonderful, healthy relationship with a woman, because that would be something that I'd have to learn how to do again. It's been a long time. But as you were speaking of, one of the things that we can ask ourselves: loneliness and alone. First, define for ourselves alone. What does that mean to you? Define it for ourselves. Some people may say, I'm a failure because I'm alone. It's all about that conditioning. I'm alone. I'm supposed to be married and have kids. I'm supposed to be with someone. I'm supposed to, I'm supposed to, I'm supposed to. Conditioning. So define alone for ourselves. Loneliness is just a feeling. I'm sure the four of us here felt lonely, and we can feel it and be with it and then move with the feeling of it. But being alone, I really feel that when we learn how to be alone with ourselves and enjoy our own company, and being able to be with that and quote unquote possibly master it, then we know how it would be when we're with others. That's what I want to begin with tonight. If everybody out there can just, define what alone means to you, because in that you might find some old conditioning and programming within that might lead to the feelings of loneliness.
Beautiful, brother.
What do you make of that, Daz? What do you make of what we were already diving into tonight? The difference for you, you've been alone and you've been lonely at times, as we are. It's part of having that human experience as a being. But I'm curious, where are you at in it in your own life, and what have you learned from your time of have moments of being lonely and or being alone?
Wow. Like Ev and Jeff said, you know, being alone can either be a good thing or not a good thing, depending on where you are as an individual. Uh, for me, oh my God, I've gone through the gamut of this emotional roller coaster of feeling lonely, having bouts of loneliness, as well as feeling alone. But there are times when I wanted to be alone.
Mhm.
So it was challenging for me. Like I think I shared on the last episode. Um, I had been going through some things my entire life with regards to my emotions. I had up and down mood swings, never really can control some of my emotions, and I would call like being hijacked. And I always found that when I felt like that, when I felt lonely, and I just overcome with this feeling of loneliness. And then, of course, the conditioning that Jeff was talking about is how do we define that? And I obviously was defining that in very bad ways, bad
Mhm.
terms, bad understandings. I interpreted through the conditioning that loneliness means I got to go find somebody so I don't be lonely anymore. And of course, you will typically find those places in unsavory venues, bars, restaurants. So these feelings of loneliness that I had experienced throughout my adult life um, was really telling with my development in terms of my healing, because I needed to try to find out where this loneliness was coming from, and how I need to address it. And again, like feeling alone, there was times when I was in a crowd of people, just like I've said, and I felt alone,
Mhm.
and not particularly lonely, but just felt alone, like I was just by myself in a crowded room. And then there were other times that I just wanted to be alone, you know. So it was very interesting to me to go through the process that I've been going through in this journey of discovering how those emotions was affecting me and my relationships with others, and how I rectify that.
Mm.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I had a recent opportunity to spend some time alone, about 10 days or so. And it was really an interesting, I used it almost as an experiment for myself, because when I wasn't actively busy in my business, I had a choice, and the choice was: do I spend the time alone, or do I engage with other people in a community? Do I keep myself busy? And I made a conscious decision that I wanted to spend more of my time by myself, with myself, for myself, so that I could have that experience. I could navigate through moments of so called loneliness and understand and really look at that. And on an emotional level, ask myself in that moment, which part of myself is feeling lonely? Is it me as a 62-year-old man, or is it me as that 6-year-old boy? And, or any age in my younger years. And each time I had those emotions around feeling lonely, I showed up for myself. I showed up, and I created opportunities to spend some what I call intimate time with myself. Play dates. One day I took myself on, I think, just shy of a 7 hour hike in the wilderness by myself. And and the truth was is that not only was it fun, I didn't feel lonely. I was alone, which led me to what I heard this in, Ev, you did this so beautifully earlier today, and you did a show promo, coming in live from your car, and in it you talked about when we are alone, perhaps we find alignment.
Mm.
Are we aligned when we are alone? When we are alone, are we all one? And that for me was beautiful. I only engaged with one social hour over the time that my partner Mary was out of the country for 10 days. And
Mm.
after that social, I realized, you know what? This is the time for me to spend by myself with myself. and really tap into that and see what it's like. And, you know, as you both, all three of you have echoed, we can find ourselves in intimate relationships with another human being and feel very lonely. Just because you're in a space or you're in an environment, you're living together even, does not guarantee that you're not going to feel lonely. How many women I hear echo as I do the work with them on the land or in session, where they're in a relationship with a partner and their partner is walled off. Their partner is afraid to express and show vulnerability on any level. And that leaves them feeling very lonely in a relationship because they feel like like they're not able to access and have that level of intimacy with the person that they care so much about. So it's an interesting topic. It's one I'm really looking forward to see what we as men have uncovered and discovered about ourselves when we gave ourselves permission to be alone and even embrace those moments of loneliness and not run away from them, not hide from them, but really examine, is it showing us a core wound? Is it showing us something about our younger years when we perhaps were the last one picked on the school PE or the last one picked, at the park for soccer or for kickball or whatever it was, when we were the last one to be dating, whatever it was, look at that and really use this as an opportunity to do some healing for your younger self. So Ed, what do you make of all of what I just shared here?
Yes, so much gold, brother. And, you take it back to those younger years. I was only sitting out on one of the recliners I've got outside that I love to get out, get underneath the sun the other day. And I saw a little lizard go past me. And it just hit a memory from back in the day. And I probably went back, it would have been about when I was 7, I reckon. And I closed my eyes and I remembered how I loved to look at lizards in that alone time, in that my own space. But then I also remembered the other side of the school programming. Remember if you ever got, in trouble? I mean, I got in trouble a couple of times back in those days. But you were sent into the corner and the teacher would say, get over there. You're going to spend time alone. So the programming was conditioned from a very, very early age, brothers and sisters. And we naturally, as a human being, are social creatures. So when you think about those belief systems that are etched into our system, we start to find our way into our lives, and then the programming from trying to find answers within our obstacles, challenges, or solutions, if we can't find that answer for in ourselves, we haven't been able to do that work, we turn to judgment on ourselves. We turn to shame. We start blaming ourselves and we become lonely. So for me, it is important, if you're getting this time, particularly right now here on the planet, as we go through this ascension, if you are getting time alone, you are being guided, you are being invited to spend this time alone, to search for the deepest parts within us, because we only have the answers for ourselves. We only are the answers for ourselves, my brothers and sisters. Anything outside of that is based on someone else's experiences, someone else's beliefs. So when we actually come back within, with this time alone, we actually start to build more self-esteem. We build more self-worth. That pushes our self-value, which drives our confidence. And not only does it build that within our inner self, but we go back into relationships much more confident and a better understanding and understanding of other people.
Yeah, I love that. I want to bring this to dads real quick. When your daughters were really young, do you recall? It just struck me right after a production meeting on this topic, and what struck me was that I remembered when my sons are newborns or infants, and they were still in a crib, and we went out and bought a mobile, some kind of musical mobile that had color and sound, and and it was attached to the railing of the crib or to the ceiling. We want to talk about programming, right? We're teaching our newborns that it's not okay to sit in quiet or lay in quiet as they're awakening. We're programming from the time they're born that how important it is for us to always be stimulated by something outside of ourselves. For something as simple, that's one of the first stimulants that a newborn receives is the stimulant of the mobile spinning around them as they're laying there in their crib, as they're either falling asleep or waking up. Do you recall that? Did you have that for your daughters, Daz?
I can't recall that, but I can recall that conversation that we had, though. I mean, I probably did, but that is that's a very important point. As a matter of fact, I was going to make the point and piggyback off of what was Ev was saying. Um, like, I can understand if you've been with someone for some years, and like in your particular situation, Jay, Mary was out of the country for a few days, and you can get that sense of separation, which can lead to a little bit of feeling of loneliness, especially if you hadn't had that throughout your relationship. But to feel lonely when you're not in a relationship, that's a deeper issue, because you're lonely for something that you don't know anything about. You're so your loneliness seems to come from a place of craving, or a place of maybe lack or scarcity. But that can't, if you really think about it, that cannot come from the person that you're imagining in the future, because you don't know that person. So that feeling of loneliness for a physical body is more of an issue internally in terms of how you're seeing yourself. I hope
Brilliant.
that makes sense.
That's brilliant. I think it's a really accurate point you just brought up. A little bit of a wisdom hit dropped right there. I want to invite Jeff to take a look at this. This question came through from a viewer earlier this evening that's going to pick us up on replay. But she says, can you have joy when you have a deep desire in your heart and it continues to be deferred for so long, and you see opportunities pass by and your joy continues to be deferred? She's referring to not being in an intimate relationship and feeling lonely. And she also goes on to say, how do you stay in a place of hope and joy rather than the feeling of grief and loss when you find yourself coming home to that empty house one more time after a full day at the office or work?
Wow, that question's a show. Well, I guess it is a show. We're doing it right
Yeah,
now.
we're doing it.
Yeah.
brother.
Welcome back, Jeff.
What comes to me right away is, and I've touched on this already. Are you looking for your joy outside of yourself? I mean, I don't like to use the word hope, because hope is a verb. And when we say, do I have hope? Then you can stay in the place of hoping, hoping that person comes along, hoping that something outside of me is going to stimulate me and bring me joy, hoping that this happens, as opposed to, as Evis always says, knowing that it's already happened and living in that place. That's what intentions are. Intentions are, I am in a wonderful, loving, conscious relationship with an available person who mirrors back to me who I am. That's an intention. So the thing to do, and this is where loneliness can come in, are we still looking, and Jay just touched on this, with the mobile with his sons. Do we always have to be stimulated? We live in a world now where there is so much outside stimulation. I mean, you could just turn on your computer and be stimulated 24/7, and using it to avoid being alone and feeling the feelings. So where are we still looking outside of ourselves for that joy, thinking that if my knight in shining armor, if my Cinderella comes along, then I'm going to feel so much joy. You'll feel joy if it's a healthy Cinderella and a healthy knight in shining armor, based upon where we have been in our aloneness, to, as Ev said earlier, to build ourselves, build the foundation of who we are, love, honor, and value ourselves. So then when we are in that place, what we're simply, say, looking for is our mirror of where we are. So the thing to do in those moments that we may be feeling lonely is, and Jace talked about this from episode 1. What am I grateful for in my life? What's in my life? What have I accomplished in my life? Where am I? Begin to look at the glass as full or half full. I've been working on myself. Where am I? Look around in that alone time. Look at how many people love, honor, and value ourselves. And then know that we already probably have some of the relationships outside of ourselves that we want, but we don't even know it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I want to switch gears here, gentlemen. I want to take us on a magic carpet ride. I'm going to shift gears to, we've been focused on the relationship around intimacy. But I want to shift here. Many of us have relationships with loved ones. It could be a son. It could be a brother, a sister. It could be a parent. It could be a friend that that transitions, that passes away, and we go through a grieving process. And in that moment of grief, we can be very devastated. What feels like a significant loss in our life, especially if it's a child that passes before we do. And it can bring us to a state of despair, a state of incredible loneliness, a state of the pain is so bad that for some, we may not even want to live. My question, Ev, I'm going to invite you to jump in on this one, and we'll play a little volley here. Tips, tricks, and tools on how to navigate through what feels like tremendous, loss and pain and loneliness when we lose a relationship that has had such an impact in our journey, this thing called life.
Yeah, it's no grief's ever easy, brothers and sisters. No grief or loss is ever easy. When we're grieving the loss of a loved one, generally I would definitely always look and ask ourselves, where are we in those stages of grief? Initially, from what I understand, we're in a state of denial straight from the get-go. And obviously, the attachment to a loved one can cause that denial, which then really goes into a state of anger that we have lost someone. And generally after that, we may even the mind starts playing around and it tries to bargain. And this is where we end up going into the depression, because we're pressing these emotions, pressing those emotions within the body. But when we're able to really come into a place and understanding, which is really that final step or stage, you would say, within the grief and loss, of acceptance. Now, I know it's never easy to accept any loss or death of someone that we love. One of the things that I did note in the video that I did this morning was, back in the day when I was coming into the awareness scene, I read a really good book about a 17th century Japanese warrior. And he was talking about a system that he had built, which was called the Dokudo. And the Dokudo was basically the path of being alone, which was really relevant for tonight as well. And one of those first steps that he talks about was of acceptance, accepting what is, what has happened, and being able to honor those loved ones for the time that we did have with them when they were present in the moment, and be able to honor those emotions that were attached to them.
Hmm.
But one of the other steps, and I think it's really important to understand, my brothers and sisters, nothing in physical form is a sure and ongoing thing. One of the things that he talks about in the Dokador is that learn that everything is temporary.
Mm-hmm.
You see, we as a
Mm-hmm.
human being and the mind wants to attach itself to
Mm-hmm.
people, places, and things in this physical existence.
Mm-hmm.
When we understand the nature of reality and universe itself, that everything is constantly changing, we can come into the place of acceptance and, like I mentioned, be able to honor those loved ones for the time that we did spend with them. And then to always know that on the other side, we're going to meet up again.
Mm.
So that's my little take on a little bit of that, Jay.
Pema Chodron, if you any people out there know who Pema Chodron is, calls it impermanence. Impermanence. Everything, or as everything is temporary, and our feelings are. If we allow ourselves to really move in and feel our feelings, in the last since August, I have probably for the first time in my life have really allowed myself to feel my feelings without having them overwhelm me or run and hide from them or find something to distract myself from a feeling. And I've found probably in the last 6 weeks all the little ways in which I have tricked myself into thinking that I was feeling my feelings, but found little ways of avoiding them. It's been a very interesting discovery period where that is concerned. And then as I allowed myself to feel my feelings and then allow the trauma behind those feelings to come up and start to be with that, and then allow it to move physically in my body and move it through my body, the impermanence of it, or it was temporary and didn't last. And when we're grieving, it's important to know that it's impermanent, it's temporary. If we allow ourselves the grieving period and the grieving time, if we really allow ourselves to feel in those times of grieving. And before we came on the air, we were talking about all different ways grief comes upon us with others, friends, loved ones, and even when we're shifting and changing who we are and releasing all of the old stuff within us, the old behaviors, allowing the wounding to come up, moving the wounding, moving the energy. What we're doing when we begin to shift and change the relationship we're having with ourselves, those old parts of ourselves die. And it's important for us to grieve that as well. We were talking about that at the beginning before we went on the air.
Beautiful. What do you make of that, Daz? What do you make of this segment that we're dived into right now around the feelings of loneliness when we go through a death of a relationship? It could be, as Jeff just ended, a relationship with our old self, but it could also be a relationship with a loved one. I just this week, a beautiful dear friend of mine who actually made this piece and another piece for me. Just experienced she was witness to see her mom transition, a beautiful woman. And I'm just curious, Daz, how do you what's your relationship with this piece of our talk this evening?
I mean, just like everybody else, I think I've had my bouts with uh, these uh, these emotional issues, psychological issues, mental issues, where our emotions overwhelmed us to the degree where it's impacting us on a not so good level. You know, it has caused deterioration in our relationships with ourselves, with others. It has caused us to make bad choices, so forth and so on. So for me, and if anybody that knows me knows my story is like one of the reasons why I got on this journey is because I reached my threshold for pain. Whether it was grieving, uh, whether it was rehashing old triggers, old projections, it really didn't matter. Uh, so for me personally, it's like I had to come to that place where, is this healthy? The way I'm grieving, the way I'm dealing, the way I'm becoming emotional, even identify with my emotions. I needed to understand, is this healthy? What I'm doing, what I'm going through, and I had to be really honest. And the honest thing was, I was feeling these things, but I didn't know why I was feeling them. I didn't know how I should be feeling them, and then even further, I didn't know how to deal with them. So, one of the good things that I learned through the years through my mentor, Dr. Lonnie Husbeth, he has a book called The Digel. It's the divine intelligence governing everyday life. And it's these cosmic forces within our nature that causes us to feel and have these emotions and have these um, uh, moments of uncontrollable emotions. That's the only way I can kind of describe it,
Mm-hmm.
where you're so distraught, whatever it is that you're feeling, that you're not in control anymore. And so that feeling of not in control of yourself, in that emotional state, in that hijacking of your emotions, I started to question whether that was healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started to really delve into trying to understand my reactions to certain things, and when my emotions gets hijacked to the point where I'm no longer in control of myself. Because when you're not in control of yourself, that's not a good place to be. So one of the things I started to try to understand is, what's triggering this. So okay, so a loss of a friend. Again, I can't speak for anybody in that sense, but I could only speak for something that was really dear to me, and that's my children. But I am thankful that I have been able to get to a place where I have control over my actions, because I had to try to understand, if anything happened to my girls, I had no idea how I was going to react. And so I had to think about those things, because when you're out of control in your emotions, you're still responsible and accountable for your actions and your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we like to try to escape and use our emotions as an escape piece, but you're still in control. So that's why I was saying earlier that what we're feeling, is it something that's like, is it the real feeling that we're actually feeling, or is this another projection, another mirror, another trigger that I'm going through, and I don't recognize it because it's masked in this kind of well, I'm supposed to feel this way because I have a loss in my life. And I'm not kind of demoting a loss in a feeling. And that's good. You need to do that. You need to feel that. But you're not only feeling that. Let me put it this way. You're not merely feeling that because of a loss. There are much, much more to that emotional grieving than the physical loss. There's something else going on there, and that's all I'm saying. If you want to be able to overcome this, I guess, incessant, long periods of grieving for personal attachment. That's something that I think that really needs a little more deeper diving in terms of what's actually causing that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there, Daz. And from the perspective of whenever I have navigated through what feels like a loss, I do some self assessment. I ask the question, emotionally, how old am I feeling right now? And because I want to determine is some of this pain, is some of this attachment to the loss coming from my younger years? Is it all coming from me as an adult? And I do believe that if it's a long standing relationship that we've been in for decades, perhaps a family member or a dear friend, um, the trigger I believe is from our youngest years. It's the child within that is taking a hit pretty hard. And then we have a choice. We can show up for the child within and do some care, bring some comfort, bring some love, for our own child within. We call the inner child, and through that process, we can help them grow up a little bit. We can alchemize the energy within us that is right now just purely suffering, and help our child within learn how to grieve in a healthy way. And for me, I just went through this with a client most recently, and I looked at what came forward for me was in this particular scenario, as I just described, it feels like a devastating loss, and it's our younger self that's feeling that. And so we hold on to that, we're attached to that. But instead, what if we look at the transition of our loved one as they're now can rest in peace. If they were suffering, if they had a difficult life or challenges, they are finally are able to rest and be at peace. But secondly, perhaps the gift that they brought to us, that relationship that wasn't all pain, but perhaps brought us joy, brought us love, brought us memories that we're not going to white out or erase, but memories that we can embrace instead of erase. And when we embrace those memories, instead of living in lack, we can flip the narrative to living in love
Yeah.
and gratitude
Yeah.
that we had that experience, that individual on some level um, was with us at a much deeper level than a friendship. It was that soul to soul level, soul to soul connection.
Yeah.
And
You
then
know,
we can honor that. Go ahead.
what Daz was talking about earlier. I had this. It's really interesting. I had a conversation with a friend today, and he and I were talking about something very similar to this, and especially what Daz was talking. Something may happen in our life that will trigger ancient and old trauma within us, as Jay just said. And then all of these feelings and emotions come up inside of ourselves, and we don't know why that triggered this.
Mhm.
And it could be, very well could be the death of a friend. It could be anything. And all of a sudden, we're feeling the depth, the dearth of the feelings coming up because something has triggered. I mean, how many times have you watched a movie and something happens in the movie and all of a sudden you're triggered and you're feeling all that, you're going, wow, that triggered what? And as Daz was just saying earlier, what is this triggering? And as Jay just said, go within. How old am I right now? What is coming up for me right now? Where are these feelings? And then the trauma, it triggers trauma within us, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Because
I wanted
go
to
ahead, Daz. Go ahead, Daz. Yeah.
I wanted to say something real quick. Yeah. So I think it'd be good to just kind of clarify. Like, healthy grieving is healthy grieving. You grieve, you take your time, whatever you need to grieve, but it should be over at some point. If you have prolonged grieving and these prolonged emotional lows, that's and you're feeling that there's some external triggers. Those external triggers are trying to get your attention about something. So
Mhm.
I'm just want to make a distinction
Yeah.
between healthy grieving, which is, whenever you time you take to grieve. But if you have these prolonged bouts of grieving, feeling lonely, feeling alone, feeling desperate, or not fragmented, or you know that's that it's time to talk to somebody, like,
Beautiful.
seriously.
Beautiful. Yeah. Let's switch gears one more time. Here's the question for you, gentlemen. Ev, I'm going to invite you to jump in on this one. How can we create a life by ourselves, yet find and experience fulfilling relationships so that we're not living in that emotional space of lack? Meaning we're making a conscious choice, at least for the season, for now, that I'm not seeking a relationship, an intimate relationship, but yet we, as you said, we are by human nature, we're relational. So how can we create a life for ourselves, but yet not feel lonely and find and experience fulfilling relationships? What any senses of being that you have made some conscious choices at this time to be by yourself? What does that look like?
Mm.
How can we find healthier relationships? Because we don't want to settle. We've done enough of that in our lifetime.
And there's a lot of people still out there picking low-hanging fruit, unfortunately. And that's just because, man, their feelings or the emotional fulfillment that they desire is validated from the external world. But it's very simple, and we talk about it plenty of times too, brothers and sisters. And this can be for you brothers and sisters that sometimes get lonely in company. It's values. When we get an understanding that we know who we don't want around us, so you've got to do the cleanup first, brothers and sisters. Once you've done the cleanup and you've started to honor your boundaries and they go up, then you go back and start identifying and revisiting these values. If you've been disconnected from other people and feeling lonely in their particular company, then that's just not an alignment to your values. So once we're able to identify those values, then we can actually start embracing. And look, you won't even need to go out and look for these particular relationships that you're talking about, Jay. They attract to who you are now.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have a deep understanding of that particular being within inside of you that is aligned to those values. Otherwise, my brothers and sisters, as we say all the time as well, you will keep attracting the lessons that you need or that you haven't learned.
Mm-hmm. Well, you should have waited with 4 minutes left to go in the show for that one.
Wow.
That's yeah, really.
So now that you went down a rabbit hole,
Yeah.
I want to bring it to the next level of ascension or descension, depending. You mentioned the word values.
Mm-hmm.
We live. Look, your last name is Love, Love. So this can get kind of tricky, slippery. When we're talking about our values being in alignment, but yet there are things that you see that are not all about love. You're seeing choices that others may be making that are not in alignment with love. They're in alignment with abuse, alignment with hurting others, alignment with disrespecting and dishonoring men and women. But yet you care. You have a relationship with those individuals, let's say. Do you look the other way because you love them when you know that they're in alignment with others that are not quite there yet? They haven't ascended in this thing called life, this thing called honoring and respecting others as human beings? Or how do you handle? How do you manage that?
Could I answer
You-
that?
Sure.
Go for it, brother.
It's your values. Why would you want to be in a relationship? It's Ev is for 170 shows. Ev always brings up values. Well, I missed the last 2 shows, so I don't know if he brought up values in those 2 shows. But if you've been watching us, you've been hearing Ev talk about values, and I'm going to be honest that when at the very beginning when Ev would talk about values, I'm like, what is he talking about? What is he talking about? What is he talking about? And then I finally, got it, and our values are so important to shape our relationships, first with ourselves and with others. I don't know how, as Jay just maybe put it in a more extreme way, seeing somebody belligerent constantly to other people, why, A, would you want to be in any type of relationship with a person like that? And if you are, what are your values? And I mean, that's a big one. It's really understanding what our values are.
Got
and
it.
what is important to us that will you would look at somebody and say, why is that person in my life if that is not in alignment with my values?
Maybe you misunderstood me, and I'll just clarify.
Okay.
Let's say that individual is not disrespecting others, but they are in alignment with someone else who is. They support someone else's behavior like that. Let's say, for example, Daz, I'm going to invite you to jump in. What's your perspective on it? Do you still love them? Do you still accept them because you're not affected by their relationship or their alignment with somebody else who's not coming from love? Or do you look the other way? Or is it come down to, I like to refer to it as moral integrity. I don't know if that's the same thing as values. We could look that up. We can go to AI, or we could go to Google search.
But Jay, that is a value. That's your value.
Integrity is a value. Exactly.
Yes, integrity is a value.
Yeah.
Integrity is a value, and then you could add any prefix or suffix to that you would
Thanks
like.
for clarifying that,
Yeah,
gentlemen. Daz, you want to jump in on this? What do you make of it? Do we still thoughts? You want to pass? You could pass to Ev, or
No,
you could
no,
jump in.
no, no, no. It's just an interesting question, but I think you already know my perspective. And my perspective is this: if there's we cannot control who comes into our constellation. We can control who we get, who remains in our constellation, but we can't control the people who come into our constellation. And when I say constellation, those who are magnetized or gravitate towards you. As Ev said, we are mirror reflections of who we are internally. So whoever's coming into your constellation, you're bringing them there. So that's the one thing. So when it comes to dealing with relationships and individuals, I look at why they're in my constellation to begin with. That's the first thing I do. It's like, well, this person, I didn't invite them like physically, but they're in my space. They're, wherever I go somewhere, they come just like you did, Jay, 8 years ago. You came into my constellation. So I use that as a perfect example. And you remained in my constellation. So with that said, that's how I look at relationships today. Where if someone is in my constellation, that means they're there for a reason, and sometimes just for a season, but they're there as an important mirror action and reaction for me to learn about myself. Because too often times we enter into relationships really not understanding that the relationship isn't to serve you from this material secular perspective, which unfortunately that's how we interpret love. We interpret love in that very low vibrational elementary way of thinking, whereas it should be a higher elevation of how we think of love, which is, loving yourself, having the values and the integrities for yourself. Because if you have that and you emanate that and you vibrate that and you show up in that, you're not going to attract individuals that you may not be attracted to on that level. Now, if a person like that comes into your constellation, then it's time to really check yourself and say, hey, okay, uh, what lessons abound in this particular encounter with this individual. So the notion that we can control relationships is just a notion. The universe, the higher self, they guide that. This journey is about learning your lessons in terms of self-actualization, coming to an individuation state where you are so fragmented in your mind that the journey is bringing that back together, the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. That helps us navigate these very questions that we've been asking tonight. Loneliness, being alone. How do we deal with individuals who are hard to deal with, and so forth and so on? I think the first thing to realize is that uh, this experience is for me, in terms of me becoming more whole person, a healthier person, a more constructive person. One of the things that I really wanted to get at is instead of implementing things to distract ourselves, we should be implementing things to be constructive, to be productive, and not necessarily to distract us from something.
I love that. I love that.
Beautiful,
With what
brother.
time we have left, we got about 4 minutes to the hour. Believe it or not, we learned here on Real Men Real Talk Live that time is just an illusion. But we do want to respect the hour power here, the power of hour here. I want to welcome back Christopher Peckham tonight. It's good to see you here. We've missed you, brother. Hope you're doing well. Jeannie Cash, of course. Good to have you back here again. Wahid, welcome back. Deb's Deb as well. Reg Rabbit, welcome to Real Men Real Talk Live. And Katrina May, always good to see you joining us from Canada. Robert Brooker, and all the rest of you that haven't dropped comments tonight. But with what time we do have left, I want to invite each one of you to give us a minute or two wrap up as far as tips, tricks, and tools. If we are finding ourselves feeling lonely, give us maybe a couple of tips, tricks, or tools, a little bit of wisdom on how can we navigate out of those emotions to rise above and find our way back to a more, let's say, even keel place of inner peace, and no longer judging and living in those dark energy vibrations. So, Jeff, you want to kick us off? Get us going here.
Yeah, you know what I wanted to share with is like I said, in the last, since the beginning of August, there's been a lot of change in my life. A very important, wonderful change in my life. One of the things I realized is when I would do a photo shoot. In the past, I'm an artist, so I'm doing a photo shoot, being creative, and it really is stimulating. And it is it stimulates my nervous system. All you creatives out there know that when you're creating something, you feel that creative energy flowing in your body, and you're on a high, and you're rolling, and you're creating. In the past, what I've found after doing that, and on my drive home by myself, all of a sudden, I felt lonely. And this is just in the last now 6 weeks. I was like, wow. In the past, that high, that rush of creativity would last a long time. And I couldn't wait until I downloaded the images and started working on them. That's not there anymore, because what I've learned in many ways, that I used all of that to distract myself from myself. It's different now. So when I allowed myself to feel it, but and as we've spoken about many times on this show, became interesting, and I became inquisitive, and I was like, this is really interesting. This is new for me. My nervous system received a huge hit, and it's not lasting anymore. And I really would come home and feel this despair and loneliness within me. And I just needed to dive into that because it was something underneath all of that. The hit to my nervous system wasn't working anymore. So I had to create a new way of, it's my livelihood and it's what I do and I love it. And looking at it from a point of fulfillment in my life. Where is my life full, and where am I fulfilled in my life, as opposed to looking at trying to fill up the mythical emptiness that I think is inside of me that brings up the feelings of loneliness. You're muted, Jay.
That's solid, brother.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ev. Beautiful.
So much gold in that, Jeff. Yeah, man. You talking about those distractions, brother. Being able to take that hit, and now you've been able to really let go of some of that trauma is just beautiful, my brother. I honor your journey and on your ascension. But as we finish up here tonight, my brothers and sisters, what I want to finish up with, we're talking about being able to let go of some of these emotions and feelings that may be still lingering in the background. And really, this is what loneliness is. It is synced up to those emotions and those feelings that have been disconnected from self. So we can feel lonely in these relationships or within company, but we have been disconnected from that inner part of ourselves where we were seeking the emotional fulfillment of other people, places, and things. I remember going back a couple of years, man. I reckon, Jay, we've done a show on loneliness before. And I remember talking about this all-time great movie, and I'm going to finish up on it again, brothers and sisters, because it's an all-time great. Home Alone. Remember when the young fella is just wishing inside the home that his family would just take off and that they just leave him alone? Well, he gets that wish. And then later on, you start to see all of these things start to seek within his home. The home is the symbol for him himself, his body. There's thieves that he's trying to keep outside of his home. There's a fictional fireplace which turns into a monster, which is a symbol of his fears within his life. He starts creating these doubts, these little fantasies within his head. But in the end of that story, you start to see him and he talks to a wise elder man. That's representing his higher self, my brothers and sisters. He comes to the conclusion when the family comes home, they're going, wow, I think his name was Kevin or something like that. Kevin, you've just changed. You've changed and all that. He said, yeah, I have changed. Now I've learned to value family and love. One of the greats, Nikola Tesla, said it best, my brothers and sisters. Spending time alone is the secret to invention. Spending time alone is when ideas are born. You're never lonely when you are truly all one, brothers and sisters. On that note, Daz, you're on.
I can't get the picture, but can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, brother.
Okay.
We see you, so be aware of that. Stay
Oh,
keep it
are we
clean.
still live?
We are.
We're still live, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're always live, even when we're not.
I don't know what happened to my my video, but
Here you are.
again, a great topic. I guess I would just gonna piggyback on what I said the last time was um, the these emotions that we experience as humans, as I'm sure Ev and Jeff eloquently said, um, it's just really indications to us of work that needs to be done within our journey. It's not an indictment. It's not to make us feel bad or miserable, but just alerting us to the potential uh, and the possibilities for the furtherance of our life. It doesn't matter whether you're young, in mid, or old. These experiences that we're having that causes these, I guess, what you call negative uh, emotions, negative issues in our lives, are just there as opportunities for us to begin more deeper work within ourselves. Um, so, in other words, like timing and circumstances plays a part in a lot of the things that I've learned. Like if the timing and the circumstances, I've got to really think about whether this is a right time to be in a relationship or not. Am I ready? Am I at a place where I can take care of myself? Am I ready to take care of somebody else? And that kind of stuff. It's like being able to really ask yourself some healthy, deep questions versus just yearning for that extra body that might not be as the best choice as we would possibly make. So that's all I got for tonight, and I hope we were able to glean some insights and understanding tonight.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want to thank each one of you, beautiful men, for showing up here tonight. I've enjoyed conversation, and here's my truth: I didn't feel lonely over the past hour and 6 minutes. I actually felt connected. And for me, this is a new experience in my life. It's only about 8 years new. For most of my life, I didn't feel connected to people. I felt very attached, and through those relationships of attachment, there were many sunsets and many moon rises that I felt very lonely. Today, my life is different. My life is different because for the first time in my life, I'm not seeking attachments anymore. I seek connections with people, strangers, people I know, people that were in my life from the past that come back to the surface in a moment. Um, and I just trust. I trust that I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And when I have those moments that bubble up where I feel lonely, I have awareness around it. I get busy. I get healthy busy. I first identify why may I be feeling lonely? Am I not paying attention to myself? Am I distracting myself with unhealthy choices? When was the last time I had a play date with myself or with a friend or with a loved one? And then I make a healthy choice for myself. It's a new way to live. It's a new way to love. It's a new way to experience this thing we called life. And with that, we're here.
Jay, I know we're up against it, but man, that I choose to have connections and not attachments. Folks, chew on that as we come to the close of Real Men, Real Talk Live.
Yeah. And with that, I love you guys. Viewers, thank you for joining us this evening on episode 170. We made it to that next level of ascension. We just got, a few more, but that would be the future trip. I'm not going to say what it's going to take to get to 200, but we'll get there one show at a time. Viewers, we love you. Thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next week on Real Men, Real Talk Live.